There's a whole world of trucking knowledge about to vanish, and nobody wrote it down. The men who ran American long haul from 1950 to 1980 knew things no app can teach today, like reading a sky for black ice, stretching diesel through a fuel crisis, talking a convoy through danger in CB code. That generation is leaving the road. When they're gone, it's gone. So we put it all in one place. The Forgotten Road Manual, 50 CB codes, diesel tricks, the iconic rigs, all of it for just $17. Scan the QR code on your screen right now and grab your copy before it's gone for good. A Detroit diesel 8V71 could be identified blindfolded from 3 blocks away by its exhaust note alone in 1988. But here's the twist. The EPA's 2010 emissions mandate didn't just clean up exhaust. It handed engine control to software written by manufacturers who could now brick a truck's power output remotely. A single mechanical engine from the 1970s could run 1.2 million miles before its first major overhaul. One emissions fix added over 500 pounds of dead weight to every truck built after 2007. A regulation aimed at smog in Los Angeles ended up deciding which engine sat under every hood in Nebraska. Subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell to be updated and get daily updates to the channel. If you want to know which engine number to look for before you ever buy a used truck. Let's count down the 10 diesel engines that built American trucking. Number 10. The International DT466. This was the mid-range diesel that became the default engine in medium-duty trucks and school buses because it was simple enough for a shop with one lift to rebuild. Introduced in 1974, it stayed in production with only incremental changes for over 3 decades. That's not a marketing claim. That's a mechanic not needing to relearn his job every few years. A shop that trained on the DT466 in 1980 could still work on one in 2005 without opening a new manual. Then EPA 2010 NOx limits forced International to bolt on selective catalytic reduction and diesel exhaust fluid systems, ending the simple mechanical design that owner mechanics had relied on for 30 years. The rebuildable engine became a sealed emission system. Number 9. The Mack E9. Paired with Mack's own Mack E9 transmission, this engine was built around high torque at low RPM, so a driver could run fewer gear shifts on a grade. It produced up to 350 horsepower and was engineered specifically to work with a 5-speed Mack E9, instead of the usual 10 to 13-speed setups everyone else was running. 5 gears instead of 13, because the torque curve did the work the extra gears were supposed to do. Mack marketed this as econodyne efficiency, and drivers who'd spent years double-clutching through 13 gears on other trucks noticed the difference immediately on long grades. Modern automated manual transmissions need dozens of electronic shift points to replicate what that torque curve did with 5. 5 gears did what a computer now needs dozens of shift points to do. Number 8. The Caterpillar 3408, a V8 diesel built for heavy hauling. Known among owner-operators for tolerating overloading and poor maintenance intervals better than the inline 6 engines everyone else was running. Later variants were rated up to 600 horsepower, a number Caterpillar wouldn't offer again in an on-highway engine for years. It was heavy, it was thirsty, and drivers who hauled oversized and overweight loads didn't care because it kept pulling when inline engines started falling off their power curve. Then came the 2002 Consent Decree, a federal settlement after major engine manufacturers were caught cheating emissions tests, and horsepower and torque ratings got forced down across the entire industry. The Consent Decree capped power the market had already paid for. Number 7. The Detroit Diesel Series 60. This was the first electronically controlled heavy-duty diesel in mainstream production, giving fleets real-time diagnostics decades before that was standard. Released in 1987, it was Detroit Diesel's first engine to run their DDEC electronic control system. A technician could plug in and read fault codes instead of guessing from symptoms, which changed how fleets scheduled maintenance instead of reacting to breakdowns on the shoulder. Fleet maintenance studies from that era credited those diagnostics with cutting unscheduled roadside breakdowns compared to the fully mechanical engines running alongside it. It proved electronics could help before regulation made them mandatory instead of optional. Number 6. The Cummins N14. One of the last mechanically injected heavy-duty diesels sold in large volume, prized by owner-operators because it could be rebuilt on the shoulder of a highway with basic tools. It stayed available with mechanical, non-electronic fuel injection into the late 90s, even as competitors had already moved to full electronic control. No laptop, no proprietary diagnostic tool, just a wrench and a fuel pump a driver understood because it hadn't changed in a decade. Then the 2002 EGR requirement made that mechanical injection incompatible with the new emissions standards, and the production run ended. The last easily fixed engine was retired by a federal deadline, not by demand. Here's where it gets stranger. Facing that October 2002 deadline, manufacturers rushed EGR-equipped engines to market so fast that early units had documented reliability problems right out of the gate. Fleets noticed. Some of them started stockpiling pre-2002 trucks and engines specifically to avoid buying the new compliant versions, betting that a known engine with a known problem was safer than a new engine with an unknown one. Truck resale prices on pre-2002 tractors spiked because buyers wanted the old engine, not the new truck around it. That bet turned into a shadow market that lasted years. Number 5. The Cummins NTC 350, part of the Big Cam family. This became the engine most associated with long-haul owner-operators through the 70s and 80s for its durability under sustained high RPM highway running. The 350 in the name is the horsepower rating, and the Big Cam series ran in various forms from 1978 into the late 1980s. It just ran. No filter to clean, no fluid to refill, no software waiting to derate the engine if a sensor drifted out of range. Modern equivalents need regular diesel exhaust fluid refills and periodic active regeneration cycles that take the truck out of full power mode to clean themselves, something the NTC 350 never needed. An engine that just ran was replaced by one that has to pause and clean itself. Number 4. The Detroit Diesel 8V71, nicknamed the Screaming Jimmy for its distinctive two-stroke exhaust note, and one of the most recognizable engines on American highways for 2 decades. It ran on Detroit Diesel's two-stroke design, a fundamentally different combustion cycle than the 4-stroke engines that eventually replaced it industry-wide. A two-stroke diesel fires on every downstroke instead of every other one, which is why it sounded different, ran differently, and why a driver 100 yards away could tell you what was coming before it came into view. Detroit Diesel discontinued two-stroke production because the design could not meet EPA emissions targets without disproportionate efficiency losses. An entire combustion design vanished from American trucks because of one emissions target. Number 3. The Mack E-Tech, also called the ASET. This was Mack's answer to tightening emissions rules, built to meet the 2002 standard while trying to hold on to the torque characteristics drivers expected from older Mack engines. It introduced Mack's version of cooled EGR to meet that October 2002 deadline. The idea was straightforward: route exhaust gas back through the intake to lower combustion temperature and cut nitrogen oxide output. The problem was the cooling package that EGR needed. It was bigger, heavier, and more complex, and mechanics who worked on both generations say it increased downtime compared to the engines it replaced. The fix for emissions became the new reason trucks sat in the shop. Here's where it gets darker. Owner-operators started buying and hoarding glider kits, new trucks built around older pre-emissions engines, which was legal because the engine itself wasn't new. A glider kit paired a fresh chassis and cab with a rebuilt pre-2002 or pre-2010 engine, which meant a driver could run a truck that looked and drove like new but never touched a diesel particulate filter. The glider kit industry grew large enough that the EPA tried to regulate glider kit emissions directly in 2016. That rule got blocked. For years afterward, gliders sat in a legal gray zone that owner-operators used specifically to keep pre-2002 and pre-2010 engines running on public roads, engines the government had already decided shouldn't exist anymore. Number 2. The Caterpillar. 3406, especially the widely used 3406B and 3406E. This became the standard owner-operators judged every other engine's reliability against for most of the 80s and 90s. Well-maintained units were commonly documented reaching 1,000,000 miles or more before needing a major overhaul. Used trucks with a documented 3406 in good condition held their resale value long after the rest of the truck had depreciated, because buyers were paying for the engine, not the frame around it. Caterpillar didn't retool it for the next round of standards. In 2009, they exited the on-highway heavy-duty engine market entirely, rather than keep developing engines to meet EPA 2010 emissions rules. The company that built the industry's benchmark engine chose to stop building on-highway engines at all. Number 1. The Cummins ISX in its pre-2010 form. This was the last widely produced heavy-duty diesel that could run without a diesel particulate filter or urea injection, the final generation of trucking's mechanically dominant ERA. EPA 2010 standards required selective catalytic reduction and diesel exhaust fluid on every new heavy-duty diesel sold after January 2010, and Cummins redesigned the ISX into the ISX-15 to comply. Drivers who ran both versions back-to-back could feel the difference in the cab. The new engine had to manage its own after-treatment system in real time, adjusting itself constantly to stay in compliance instead of just making power. One regulation closed the era these 10 engines built. Go look up the engine code on the last truck you rode in, mechanical or electronic, and find out which EPA deadline built it. Name the engine in the comments. 3406, N14, Series 60, ISX, whatever it was, that you or someone you know ran the longest without a rebuild. 10 engines, one set of deadlines. Then it stopped.